There's something paradoxical about the time we live in. We've never had more tools to connect, more platforms to share, or more data to consume, and yet we've also never been more distracted. In a world where everyone is looking outward, at trends, opinions, conflicts, and clicks, the real advantage lies in turning inward. Focusing on yourself is not an escape from responsibility. It's the foundation of it. When you think about progress, real, sustained progress, it rarely happens by accident. It's the result of 1,000 small investments made consistently over time. And while we often talk about investments in the context of business, infrastructure, or technology, there's one form of investment that underpins all others: investment in yourself. In a world that is changing faster than ever, your most reliable asset isn't a title, a network, or a bank account. It's your ability to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep becoming better than you were yesterday. Early in my career, I was obsessed with software, not because it was trendy or popular, it wasn't, but because I saw in it the potential to transform how people live and work. That obsession didn't come from pressure. It came from curiosity, and curiosity is a form of self-investment. It forces you to stretch, to wrestle with difficult problems, to keep pushing the boundaries of what you understand. The time I spent reading, experimenting, and reflecting on failure wasn't glamorous, but it paid off, not right away, but gradually, and then exponentially. That's how growth works. You can't force it, but you can cultivate the conditions that make it possible. You can be deliberate with your time. You can choose to read instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to build instead of complain. Every one of those choices compounds, not in dramatic ways at first, but in small, invisible ones. You begin to think more clearly. You respond more thoughtfully. You make better decisions, not just once, but consistently. And consistency, more than brilliance, is what separates those who thrive from those who stall. There's a tendency to look outward for validation or direction, but the truth is, the most important feedback loop starts within. Are you asking better questions than you were last year? Are you more resilient in the face of failure? Are you spending your time on things that actually matter to your goals? If the answer is no, the solution isn't to blame the environment. It's to invest more deliberately in yourself. That might mean developing new skills, technical or interpersonal. It might mean improving your health, your mindset, or your discipline. And it almost certainly means getting more comfortable with discomfort, because that's where growth happens. Nobody becomes excellent by doing what's easy. They become excellent by doing what's necessary, even when it's hard, boring, or uncertain. In every field, from science to business to education, the people who make the greatest impact are rarely the ones chasing trends. They're the ones who have cultivated the patience and focus to master fundamentals. They spend years working on problems most people would rather avoid, and that ability doesn't come from natural genius. It comes from investing in themselves long before anyone else believed in what they were building. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned is that momentum starts small. A single book can spark a new way of thinking. A new habit can shift the trajectory of a life, and often the breakthroughs don't come from grand epiphanies. They come from quiet, repeated effort. You can't control outcomes, but you can control your input. You can choose to show up, to keep learning, to keep improving day after day. The world rewards people who solve hard problems, but you can't solve hard problems if you're not prepared. You need stamina. You need insight. You need the kind of mental infrastructure that only comes from years of investment. The best opportunities tend to show up for those who are already ready, and being ready is the result of preparation, not luck. It's easy to get distracted, to measure your worth by how busy you are or how many people notice what you're doing. But the truth is, the most important work often happens when nobody is watching. It's the hours spent learning when it's inconvenient. The time spent thinking deeply when everyone else is moving fast. The discipline to stay the course when others are chasing shortcuts. Ultimately, the value you create for yourself, for your work, for the world, will be a reflection of the time and effort you put into developing your own capacity. That doesn't mean isolating yourself or ignoring others. It means recognizing that the foundation for everything you do out there begins with what you're doing in here, in your habits, in your mindset, in your quiet commitment to keep improving. Self-investment isn't a luxury, it's a necessity, especially in a world where change is constant, uncertainty is normal, and the future will reward those who are agile, thoughtful, and deeply prepared. The question isn't whether you're smart enough or connected enough. The question is, are you growing? Are you learning? Are you putting in the work now that your future self will thank you for? Because if you are, then you're already on the right track. There's a common misconception that focusing on yourself is a form of selfishness, that choosing to prioritize your own growth, clarity, and well-being somehow comes at the expense of others. But in reality, it's the opposite. The most responsible thing you can do for your family, your team, your community, and the world is to make sure you're operating at your best. That means taking care of your mind, your body, your time, and your energy. Because without that foundation, your ability to contribute meaningfully is limited. Throughout life, you're going to encounter demands from every direction, deadlines, expectations, crises. And often, the instinct is to push yourself aside in order to respond to those demands as quickly as possible. But over time, that catches up with you. Burnout sets in, decision-making gets sloppy, perspective narrows. When you're depleted, it doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone who depends on you. That's why focus is so important. Not just focus in the work sense, but focus in the personal sense, knowing what matters most to you, having the discipline to say no when something doesn't align, making time to sharpen your skills, improve your health, or simply reflect. These things aren't indulgences, they're maintenance. Just like you wouldn't run a piece of critical software without updates. You can't expect yourself to function at a high level without consistent attention to your own development. It's worth acknowledging that self-focus looks different depending on where you are in life. For a student, it might mean investing more hours in learning how to learn, not just chasing grades. For a parent, it might mean creating boundaries that allow for rest and patience. For a leader, it might mean making space to think deeply rather than reacting to every fire that appears. But in every case, the underlying principle is the same. When you take care of yourself, you perform better. And when you perform better, everyone around you benefits. One of the things I've learned over the years is that clarity comes from intentional reflection. You don't get it by rushing through task lists or overcommitting your calendar. You get it by creating space to think. And in that space, you begin to see patterns, what's working, what's draining you, what's worth doubling down on. Without that clarity, it's easy to become reactive, pulled in 100 directions by other people's priorities. But with it, you can set direction with confidence and bring others along more effectively. That's especially important when you're building something, whether it's a business, a team, or a life, because what you build will reflect who you are. If you're scattered, it will be scattered. If you're clear, it will have direction. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be intentional. And that begins with the decision to stop outsourcing your focus, to stop living by the urgency of others, to stop measuring your day by how much noise you responded to. It's not about isolation, it's about alignment. You're not withdrawing from the world, you're equipping yourself to engage with it more powerfully, because when you've done the work to stay grounded, you're less likely to be thrown off course by chaos. You're more likely to respond with thoughtfulness instead of emotion. You're more capable of managing complexity without losing your sense of direction. That doesn't just help you, it helps everyone who looks to you for leadership, guidance, or support. Whether you're managing a team, raising a family, or working on a project that matters, people will take their cue from your energy. If you're calm, they're more likely to be calm. If you're clear, they'll be clearer. If you're committed, they'll match that commitment. But all of that starts with your own habits, mindset, and focus. In a noisy, high-speed world, self-focus can feel counterintuitive. There's always another meeting, another notification, another request. But urgency is not the same as importance, and if you spend your whole life reacting, you may never have the chance to build something truly meaningful. You may never fully develop the capacity you have within you to lead, to solve problems, to create, to grow. Focusing on yourself isn't about tuning others out. It's about tuning yourself in. It's a decision to get better, not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of every person your work and presence might impact. It's not selfish, it's responsible, because if you want to help build a better world, you need to start by building a stronger you. That's where the leverage is. That's where the impact begins. Every major shift in the world, whether in science, technology, public health, or social change, can almost always be traced back to someone who was ready before the moment arrived, someone who had spent years, often quietly, preparing their mind, reading, thinking, asking difficult questions. It's tempting to believe breakthroughs happen suddenly, but they rarely do. More often, they are the result of preparation meeting opportunity. When minds are ready, they don't just respond to change, they shape it. What separates the people who move the world forward isn't access or luck alone. It's the groundwork they've laid long before anyone is watching. They've trained themselves to think critically, to seek patterns, to adapt quickly when the environment shifts. That preparation doesn't come overnight. It's built gradually through daily effort and curiosity. They're not just accumulating knowledge, they're training their brain to handle complexity, ambiguity, and long-term thinking. Being prepared doesn't mean you know exactly what's coming. No one does. It means you've built the capacity to learn quickly, to absorb new information, and to make decisions based on principles, not panic. And that kind of mental readiness is one of the most valuable assets a person can have, especially now when information moves faster than comprehension and the pace of disruption is accelerating across nearly every sector. In moments of crisis, the world doesn't wait for people to get ready. It moves, and it moves fast. That's why preparation is non-negotiable. The minds that make the biggest difference are the ones that stay sharp between the headlines. They're not just reacting to the moment, they're already working on the next problem, the next breakthrough, the next step forward. Their preparation gives them options when others are out of ideas. We tend to celebrate the public moment of success, a product launch, a major discovery, a bold decision. But the real story starts much earlier. It starts with years of studying subjects most people ignore. It starts with learning from failure, not just avoiding it. It starts with asking uncomfortable questions and chasing better answers, even when no one else is paying attention. There's a quiet discipline behind every major advancement. You see it in scientists who run experiments for years before publishing, in entrepreneurs who iterate on a problem that most people gave up on, in policymakers who read beyond the surface and prepare for long-term consequences, not just short-term applause. These are the people who shape the future because they've already imagined it in detail. The key is not to wait until you need knowledge to start acquiring it. By then, it's too late. The world doesn't pause while you catch up. Prepared minds anticipate challenges. They ask, what are we not seeing? What happens if the current system breaks? What would we do differently if we weren't afraid to be wrong? Those questions are the seeds of progress. but they only grow in minds that have made room for them, minds that are less distracted, more intentional, and deeply engaged with the world around them. Learning today is not just about mastering facts. It's about learning how to think, how to prioritize, how to distinguish signal from noise. There's more information available than ever before, but access doesn't equal understanding. Prepared minds know how to process, how to test assumptions, and how to spot patterns others miss. They're not overwhelmed by information because they've trained themselves to make sense of it. That level of preparation doesn't require privilege or perfection. It requires consistency. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be relentlessly curious and humble enough to keep learning. Every hour you spend reading, listening, or reflecting builds a stronger foundation. And one day, when the world demands solutions you didn't even see coming, you'll be ready not because you predicted the moment, but because you prepared for the unknown. We can't control when the world will shift, but we can control how ready we are when it does. Whether you're an engineer, a teacher, a doctor, a student, or someone still trying to figure it all out, your preparation matters, your thinking matters. And when minds like yours engage with the right challenge at the right moment, real change happens, not by accident but by design. So keep learning, keep building, keep thinking deeply. The future needs prepared minds. And it always will. As you go forward, remember this. The most important project you will ever work on is you. That's not ego, that's responsibility. Because when you focus on yourself, not in selfishness, but in sincerity, you give the world something valuable, a person who's prepared, present, and deeply capable of solving real problems. The world is full of noise. But you don't have to be. Make focus your default. Make learning your habit. Make growth your mission. And trust that everything else will follow. Thank you.